History's great strategic thinkers show us that we can prepare ourselves for most any challenge. But first, we begin with a famous caveat. In the year 1789, Benjamin Franklin wrote the following in a letter. Our new Constitution is now established and has an appearance that promises permanency. But in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Now, given everything we know now about strategy, from Sun Tzu to Clausewitz to how our brains work, let's add one more thing to Franklin's very short list. Nothing can be said to be certain except death, taxes, and uncertainty. Uncertainty plagues us. It's everywhere, in our professional lives and in our personal lives. It's tough to read the signals coming in, whether from other persons in close relationships, to our coworkers, to our seniors and subordinates, to our competitors in other firms, on other teams. Throughout these lectures, we have emphasized this battle with uncertainty about the future and how to deal with it. But the measure of our success is not whether we can predict the future. It's how prudently we prepare for it. It's how we coolly disaggregate the churning morass of possibilities that cascade on us and make us want to throw up our hands in frustration. We cannot predict the future, not even our own future. But we've seen that we really don't need to. By adopting various combinations of strategic thinking techniques and tools of analysis, and by seizing a substantial role in developing our circumstances, we can improve our chances of succeeding at the tasks we set for ourselves. We can successfully alter the conditions that affect the future that concerns us in our personal lives, as well as in the professional realm. I tell my students that strategy is a plan of where we want to go based on an analysis of where we've been, where we are, and what resources we'll need to make the trip. On a personal level, it's a plan based on what's in here and what's out there. Of course, it's much more than that, but that simple trope keeps us focused on the essentials. It's enough to get our heads up out of the mundane daily tasks that absorb us. In these lectures, we've discussed a full range of strategic thinking skills valuable for any strategic thinker. Now, let's look at how a few exemplary human beings have lived strategic lives, creating opportunities, seizing them, charting a course that is not free from failure, but with a trajectory that is ever upward. This final lecture offers several strategic thinkers who exemplify how to live a life informed by strategy, informed by principle, forward-looking thinkers who were also steeped in the past, who possessed what we might call a strategic imagination. One early American who practiced the art of strategic thinking on a superior level that has rarely been matched was Benjamin Franklin. Visualizing the future and crafting that future, shaping it, manipulating it, acting in ways to maximize a productive relationship to his environment. Franklin was, of course, a man of extreme talent. He was an autodidact, self-educated. Living his life completely within the 18th century, he was a man greatly influenced by the Enlightenment. He counted Voltaire among his acquaintances. And this made him a man for all times, speaking with a voice armed with principles. It was Franklin's vision, coupled with an equally determined drive, that led him to press forward his entire life. It's this pressing forward that characterizes so many great personages. He grew, he prospered, he adapted to his environment, seizing opportunities and creating them as well. When he wanted to get started in the Philadelphia printing business, he convinced the governor of Pennsylvania to send him to London to study printing technology. In return, he offered to provide the governor with better printed documents as a result of his study trip. This adaptability served him throughout his life, and he lived that life in the most strategic manner conceivable. His personal entrepreneurial philosophy was typical of the great strategic thinkers of history. It was captured in this famous epigram: "If you would not be forgotten as soon as you are dead and rotten, either write things worth reading or do things worth the writing." Franklin exhibited the strategic personality's thirst for knowledge and ideas. When he was only 21, he created a group to discuss scientific and political ideas, which later evolved into the American Philosophical Society. Franklin and his associates founded the first public library in America in 1731. In 1749, he launched an initiative to found what would become later the University of Pennsylvania. He contributed to the text of the Declaration of Independence, and during the Revolutionary War years, he served as leader of a commission to seek support from France. He was the toast of Europe and carefully managed a personal brand that established the stereotype of American rustic genius. We've noted how important the game of chess is as a training device for strategic thinking. Franklin was a chess player. In fact, he was the first person in America that we know by name as a chess player. He was such a great admirer of this elegant game that he even wrote an article called The Morals of Chess. In short, Franklin shared with most strategic thinkers a curiosity combined with a lust for life. He put himself into the mainstream. He was always powerfully engaged with his environment, never on the metaphorical sidelines. He left us legacies in a half a dozen fields, any one of which would be enough to ensure his place in history, in science, in politics, education, in literature, in military affairs, in business, and in finance. The good news for us today is that the secret of his success was really no secret at all. Franklin lived his life by a set of principles that maximized his natural gifts. Franklin developed his own strategic plan, a list of 13 principles. These were not merely notions of how to live the good life, but a blueprint for a robust and future-oriented existence, the seizing of opportunities and the creation of others. The test of his principles are their continued applicability in the present. While all 13 of these virtues are surely worthy of consideration and of your own pursuit, if only for historical interest, 4 of them immediately yearn for our attention. Order. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. Resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought. Perform without fail what you resolve. Frugality. Make no expense but to do good to others or yourself. Waste nothing. And finally, industry. Lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. These 4 guiding principles suggest to us that one key to tackling the uncertainty that surrounds us is to establish an island of certitude in the midst of uncertainty. The world may be uncertain, but that is no need for us to share in that uncertainty. Indeed, the very nation and constitution that Benjamin Franklin did so much to help establish depended vitally on strategic thinking skills that Franklin and others had cultivated across an entire lifetime. Another man with a fabulously strategic mind who strode the first half of the 20th century like a giant was Sir Winston Churchill. Churchill is best known for his role as Britain's prime minister during the darkest days of World War II, when England stood alone against Nazi Germany. His personal courage, his resolve, and his powerful rhetoric inspired the resistance of the nation. But this was just one chapter in the life of one of the most extraordinary strategic minds of any century. For Churchill lived life as large as anyone in history and had the knack of being on the scene of great events. This knack was the result of his personal drive that moved him constantly from the periphery into the mainstream of life, where great things happen. This alone is a lesson to the rest of us. The lesson is to engage, to move into the mainstream, where access to collateral possibilities make themselves known to us. Churchill lived a rich life, outstripping that of any epic fictional character. Churchill's extraordinary exploits began much earlier and were born of an incredible drive. His father died at the young age of 45, and Churchill believed that he too would die young. He would have to move fast to establish a legacy worth leaving. It was perhaps this sense of urgency, above all else, that drove Churchill his entire life. And this urgency is evident in his thirst for battle, for courage-testing trials, for confrontation. In 1895, Churchill became a war correspondent, and he traveled to Cuba to observe the Spanish fight the Cuban guerrillas and to write about the daily conflict for the Daily Graphic. It's there that he cultivated a lifelong penchant for Cuban cigars at age 21. He obtained a commission in the army and immediately did what any good strategist ought to. He put himself into the mainstream, albeit an extremely dangerous version of the mainstream. He sought the riskiest assignments. He served in British India, the the Sudan, and the Second Boer War. While in the Sudan, serving as a cavalryman with the 21st Lancers, he participated in the last